giving our opinions, but I just want to accentuate the word facts. Okay, meaning we have some references, and our claims must be always be supported by different preferences or coming from the expertise of other people. Okay, it may be primary or secondary sources of information. Okay, so as we believe or as we come up with the different parts of chapter one, so we have introduction, objectives, hypothesis, if there's a necessity for us to include a hypothesis, if we have hypothetical objective in the statement of the problem. And then we have also the scope, the limitation and limitation of the study. The same also with pedagogical implications and definition of terms. So we are going to dissect one by one. So for in making the introduction, once again, I just want to clarify that in crafting the introduction or the background of the study, it is necessary that we have some basis, okay, of claiming those ideas. And we normally show that an idea is supported by a specific reference by having our citations. Because I just want to say that, or we believe that the introduction is not a place for your personal opinion or reflection. What I mean with this one is, I know we have this idea in mind. We have this. We observe, based on our experiences, we observe this kind of problem. But I think there is a necessity for us to validate our observations. It is because as researcher, we should not be conclusive with what we are observing in our environment, in our working stations. Okay, we are not that conclusive. That's why we have to base our writing on the knowledge of other people and the expertise of other people by means of reading related articles or related references, very well connected to our study. Okay, so once again, the introduction is not a place for your personal opinion, but a personal opinion may be objective if we intersect that with a specific reference. So there are times that we have this opinion, we have this idea, but once we read a specific article, then we find out, my idea is correct. So meaning to say that from opinion, it becomes objective in the sense that you are not the only one claiming that kind of idea. So always remember, an academic paper is always a scientific paper. So when we say scientific, it must be supported by empirical and empirical evidences. Okay, so therefore, you need to give if you are going to write the introduction or the background of the study, there are only three important parts. The first part is you are going to have the description of the important terminologies, wherein we say that the introduction is the beginning gear, the beginning gear for the readers to be in the scenario that you want to let them in, okay, in reading the academic paper. So meaning description. So where are we going to base our description? So basically those important terminologies in our title. So we try to analyze the title of our study and pinpoint the important terminologies that are needed in the beginning paragraphs, okay, for our readers to establish their preliminary understanding about our paper. And as they go along with the reading of the introduction or the background of the study, okay, they basically, if they establish their understanding, then it will be the start of their appreciation of our study. Okay, so the first parts will be all about description. Okay, so conceptual or research-based descriptions of those important terminologies that we refer as very important to define. Okay, because a lot of the different parts of our academic paper will give us opportunities to deepen the explanation about example, the phenomenon or that specific context. Okay, so wag nating mamadaliin kumbaga. Okay, so patikim lang tayo. Okay, why is it interesting from we must also establish, and we must also answer the question, why is it interesting from the scientific point of view? So what is something fishy in our study? So that will ignite the interest of our readers, of the panel members, okay, of the university, for them to approve your study, for them to agree with what you are claiming. Okay, so what about the features of an introduction? So, ang actually, I'm going to give tips to our advisors and even to our students. In making the introduction, I think it is very important to plan. Okay, introduction once again is not an open-ended open-ended part of our study, or wherein we are allowed to just whatever comes in our mind, we write it. But I think it must organization is very important. That's why I write here it is thematic but not in themes. So you will not be seeing the different themes, but basically as you read the introduction, for you to establish the organization and the coherence of from one paragraph to another paragraph, I think there must be first the conceptual map. Okay, the conceptual or the concept map of the introduction, where the advisor and the researcher will agree with. Okay, so after finalizing those themes to be discussed in the background of the study, then it's time for the student to look for the related references. Okay, each perspective must have citation. What I mean by perspective, perspective is an objective idea. What I mean with this when I say perspective here, it is an objective idea that must be validated by a specific reference. But it doesn't mean that all the sentences have citations. Okay, it depends on the nature of the idea we are claiming in that specific paragraph. So if we want to convince, or if we are establishing a specific context, and basically if there is a preliminary idea, then we want to expound it more. So therefore, the further explanation must not be having the citations. Only the kumbaga in English we have the main idea. Okay, the main idea must have the citation, and then the elaboration we don't need to put citations, because it is not opinionated. It is because it has already the basis. Am I right? The basis is the idea coming from a specific reference. We are just elaborating it for us to establish a holistic understanding about that claimed idea. Okay, so the last sentence, sabi nga natin, it's also very important to establish coherence, kasi ito yung kalimitan nagiging problema natin pag may mga proposal defense, yung bang jumping of topics. Okay, so for us to smoothly and for us to have these smooth transitions in the discussion of the preliminary understanding about our study, then the last sentence must connect, must preliminarily introduce what will be discussed in the next paragraph. So it's just a tip, but it depends on your style. Okay, it should establish the rationale. Okay, what do you mean by rational? It's not about the significance of the study, which is the common interpretation of the students, that once they are asked to cite the rationale of the study, they will be citing, or they will be writing about the possible impact of the study to a specific organization or people or group of people. But it's not actually. When we say rational, it's all about the gaps, okay, that we notice, that we figured out, okay, out of reading different references, out of interviewing different people. Okay, once again, it could be primary or second. Our ideas may be sourced from primary or secondary sources. Okay, so rational will establish that there is a need for us to conduct the study. It's a persuasive paragraph that is based from our empirical evidences, from different readings and references, that it is existing, that this gap is existing, that there's no one who conducted this kind of study. So that's the important manifestation that we have a good rationale of our study. Okay, so it should communicate the purpose of the study in bird's eye view, because sometimes, sabi, it's all about, we say, the purpose. It may somehow be connected to significance, once again, of our study. But what we are looking at this, at the last paragraph of this, of the introduction, is how do you envision after you finish your study, you look beyond. Okay, you look beyond its impact. Okay, after the impact is being realized. Okay, by your target organization, or by the group of persons who will benefit from your study, and what will be the necessary after effects. Okay, so meaning visionary, you are looking beyond, let's say, after 10 years of establishing the study, how do you imagine this specific group of people? Okay, so sabi natin, we avoid redundancy in writing the paper. So we don't want repetitive ideas. We want every part of our paper to be something new, to be something fresh, and something motivational in terms of, in the part of our audience. Okay, so this is just a suggestion, or it's just an example on how I visualize in the writing of the background of the study. So we may have the following. So you may fill in. You may replace the following by actual themes and sub themes. Okay, and then you have the gaps that you identify. That's why you come up with that specific title, and leading to your, actually the gaps will lead to your statement of the problem or objectives of the study. And then the research purpose, you may have 2 to 3 purposes. You may have uh, 3 to 5 purposes, depending on how you envision the possible effects of your study uh, to your target beneficiaries. Okay, but once again, it will not be stating the significance of your study. I mean, it's general. It's a bird's eye view purpose of your study. Okay, so because dito introduction may have 6 to 8 pages. It doesn't need to be longer than, I think, 8 pages. But once again, para ito lang yung pinaka-standard natin, ano? Para hindi, baka naman kasi lahat na lang nilagay na lang ninyo sa introduction, wala na kayong masulat sa mga susunod na. No? So, unti-unti. So, I mean, you unfold the ideas in a gradual process. Huwag mong madaliin. Kasi pag nasabi mo na agad lahat sa introduction, ano pang sasabihin mo sa mga susunod na part? So, in a gradual process. Okay, so this is just an example. So once again, as what you notice, there are citations for each sentence. But if you're going to read each sentence, I am claiming ideas. I am persuading you that economic growth and development of a country can be sustained through an ecosystem of curious and capable people. It must not be opinionated. It must not be coming from my own perspective. So for other people to believe in you, okay, there must be a specific reference where you sourced your opinion before, and then you intersect that with that idea in the reference, and that's why it becomes now a validated idea. Okay. So when we say validation, not only 1 or 2 persons are believing in that kind of idea. So in general, the public is believing in that kind of idea. Okay, so I have here also the suggested process on how to craft your introduction. But once again, it will depend on the orientation of your advisors and how they will help you in coming up with your introduction. But I suggest once again that you must have the concept map first. You have to plan it. You must have the blueprint of your introduction for you to have that gradual transition of your of the context, and even in the discussion of the rationale and the purpose of your study. Okay, so it seems like we are gathering pieces of ideas from different references, and we combine them. Okay, when we recombine different ideas, that's a manifestation of synthesis. Okay, in the Bloom's taxonomy, which is the second to the highest level of cognitive skill of a person. So synthesizing means from the available ideas, you recombine them, you mix them to form new product or to form new interpretation or to form new insights. And that's what we call synthesis. Okay, so an example of synthesis is, for instance, what is existing in real life in at home in dealing with rats is you have the mouse trap. But in synthesizing, you're going to create a mouse trap without a trap. Okay, so that's an example of synthesis. Okay, so this is just once again a strategy on how to come up with a quality background of the study or introduction. You may have this template. So we have the theme, and then we have the sub theme, and then we have the literature, and then what are the target articles, and then the references. Okay, so the theme here is indigenous education. That's why we have the following sub themes. Okay, for every sub theme, you may have 3 literature. At least you have 4 to 7 sentences in a paragraph, kasi it's tiring to read a whole page paragraph. Okay, so and then after coming up with this one with your plan, and then you have now the actual, no, the actual ideas that you sourced from a specific reference. So you have the copy paste an idea, and then what have you learned from these ideas? Then that's your insights. And can we say it's opinionated? No, because this is based from the copy paste idea, the ideas that the original idea that comes from uh, the specific article. So then you have also your references. Okay, then after that, so you have your literature 1, 2, and 3. You have your learned insight and ideas, and then it's time for you to come up with a meaningful paragraph out of this. Okay, so this is how we quality assured each paragraph of the introduction. So nakita natin that there's an evident use of those references. Mahuhuli natin kung talagang nagbasa ang mga estudyante natin o hindi using this kind of template. So medyo mahirap, but once again, sabi ko nga, every time we struggle, we learn new things. Kasi pag sinabi natin, ay, nagawa na namin to dati, okay, sanay na ako sa ganito. If we are adept in doing such thing, then there's no new learning. But every time we struggle and we adapt and we fit ourselves in that kind of struggle and we overcome the struggle, then therefore there's no learning. But it doesn't mean pahihirapan natin. So dun lang tayo sa kung anong mas mapapalong sa mga estudyante. But once again, we are aiming to have this quality paper. Okay, so research objectives, very traditional lang itong mga itong ano na to, the searchable statements. And by the way, we have our panel members to evaluate whether it's researchable or not. Smart, simple verbs. Okay, you don't need to use highly technical terminologies, because once again, we are writing to express and to be understood by other people. So we try to use those simple terminologies, okay, for us to increase understanding and comprehension among our audience. Okay, and then short and direct, wala nang paligoy-ligoy pa, and then variables, there must be specified variables. And once again, these variables must not be based on the understanding of the researcher himself or of the advisor herself or himself, but the variables must be also validated by references. Okay, so for it to become objective also. And then there's no such required number of objectives that our college must have for you to be accepted for this kind of writing. So you must have 5 objectives. Hindi po. Okay, so it depends on the essence. It depends on the substance of each objective. So basically, in my dissertation, I have only 3 objectives. But ang isa sa pinakamahaba talaga nitong explain ko, itong first objective ko, you determine the pertinent and contextualized pedagogical practices of master and key teachers of the public and private senior high schools that offer STEM strand in terms of, I have 4 variables here or 4 themes here to be discussed. And I utilize both quantitative and qualitative for me to come up with a saturated data. Okay, when we say saturated, we try to combine and combine, we combine until we finalize, and until we can say that such theme or such idea can stand alone and cannot be intersected or cannot be mediated with other ideas. Okay, so ito yun. Yeah. And then the second one, design and validate. Medyo matrabaho din po ito. Design and validate an emerging pedagogical model that frames teaching science courses. And then the third objective is develop one lesson exemplar. Okay, so it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of the different objectives, the substance. Once again, are those objectives substantial? If yes, then it could be three, could be only two. It depends on the how the researcher will be having that in-depth investigation of the phenomenon. And then hypothesis, this is, I think, an optional part of the paper if you have the hypothetical objective or hypothetical questions. Okay, so it may be in the form of there's no significant difference or there is no significant relationship in null form. Okay, so yun naman kalimitan lagi ang naging approach natin. Maybe also alternative, or your hypothesis may be also in the form of cause and effect relationship. Specifically in dealing with qualitative paper, qualitative researchers may also have hypothesis, but our hypothesis may be stated in the form of cause and effect relationship. Okay. And then let us have the scope, the limitations, and limitations. Okay, so we are writing this. It is because we want to clarify the boundaries and even the exemptions and the reasons why those exemptions are considered in writing the paper, and the reservations inherent in your study. Because we believe, just like the teaching and learning strategies, techniques, and approaches, there's no such best research designs. Okay, what we want to establish here in writing the scope, the limitations, and limitations of the study is we try to accept the weakness of our paper, and we try to justify why those weaknesses are existing in the paper, and what are our strategies for us to counterpart, okay, to counter part those to counter those weaknesses. Okay, so what are those strategies for us to convert those weaknesses into strengths of our paper? Okay, so the limitations, look at this in single paragraph. So you may discuss the following. So you may discuss the specific variables. Okay, you may reason out why those variables are your focus. Wherein there are a lot of variables out there. If you're going to read a lot of researches or articles, you may be encountering different variables aside from the variables in your paper. But why is it that those variables are prioritized in your paper? And then specific participants. But not necessarily you're going to describe those participants. You will just mentioning them. Okay, let's say, are they students? Are they teachers? Okay, sabi ko dito, it may be sourced from proposal. Yung specific variables may be sourced from SOP, statement of the problem. Since nagawa natin ng SOP dito, so very easy lang sa atin, very convenient to specify those variables. What about specific participants? It may be sourced from our proposal, or kasi kalimitan may mga papers din po kasi na yung delimitations are written at the last chapter after they finish the study. But I think it's also it could be also an option that this part may be included at the last part, because I think it's very definite for us to identify really, okay, the limitations of the study after finishing our study. Okay, but once again, I think it's strategic in the sense that in the beginning of the paper we are expecting that these are the possible things that our paper will be delimited. Okay, so specific sites from proposal chapter 3, and then could be also yung research design that you're going to employ in your study. But it's not in the form of methodology, because once again, gradual. Okay? Unti-unti lang yung paglalabas ng bala natin. Okay? So sa chapter 3, we are going to deepen your discussion about your participants, and then your specific sites, and even the research design. In here, it's just the surface uh, understanding about the study. And then limitations, what will be discussed in limitation, normally it will focus on the statistical procedures. If you will be conducting quantitative, if you will be having quantitative design and research strategies. If it is qualitative, you may also discuss about the strategy, okay, the strategy that you will employ. And also, it is also very important to discuss about the strengths and weaknesses of that specific design, okay, of that specific strategy, of the statistical procedure. Okay, you may also discuss about their strengths and weaknesses. Okay. Kaya alam niyo po, in the scope, the limitation, limited, you may also find a gap. Okay, if this is not employed or not utilized in this paper, in the next paper I will be having a parallel study, but I will be using different design. Okay, so sabi natin that it can be proposed to be discussed in specific paragraph. Okay, so sometimes the limitation may be in the methodology section, because as what you can see, it's more on the parts of the methodology. But once again, it's just a surface understanding about what will be done in our paper. The in-depth discussion will be in the chapter 3. Okay? So they are aligned. So meaning, related si scope delimitation, si delimitation sa ating chapter 3, and even limitation is also related to our chapter 3. Okay? So for those who will be checking the paper of our students, okay, these are the two parts that you could connect from each other. Okay, so we have the limitations into, ayan, so the limitations may be into the final session of the study. So it may be at the beginning or at the end, but basically in our format, it is at chapter 1. Okay, so what about the pedagogical implication? So you may discuss the significance or the influence of your study, specifically in teaching and learning process, since we are in the from the College of Teacher Education. So our purpose, our target is for the teaching and learning process, for the educative process, or we are also expected to further discuss the outcome of our study to curriculum, instruction, learning environment, and feedback system. You may discuss the effect or the impact of your study to the following components of pedagogy. Okay, because my study is all about pedagogy, and based on my study, these are the 4 important elements or components of a pedagogy. So we must try to emphasize about the curriculum, the instruction, learning environment, and feedback system. So in defining this, you may also read some articles or some research references about these themes. Okay, so another one is the definition of terms, which is before it is in the chapter 2, but we agreed that it must be put in the chapter 1 because we believe that our student researchers must have that preliminary understanding about these important terminologies that they will be using, that will establish the context of the study. Okay, so that's why it's put in. It is in the chapter 1, because that preliminary understanding, once again, it will be deep. It will be deepened the part of the literature review. Okay, so for those who will be checking the paper, once again, you may connect the definition of terms and also the literature review. Okay. Specifically those terminologies that have only conceptual definitions. Okay, so example of definition of terms, as what you can see, not all terminologies have operational definition. You may put operational definition if it is necessary. Okay, if you can see that your paper will be promoting new context of the use of the word. But if you think that it's not necessary and you will just be using the terminology the same with the definition, the same with what is being said in the conceptual definition, then there's no need to put operational definition. Okay. Okay, so they have question with chapter 1. Let's proceed to chapter 2. So, pagdating natin sa chapter 2, okay, we have the following parts. Literature review, and in this part, we must have, it is thematic, really. No, we expect that this part must have at least 4 themes, I think, or 4 to 5 themes, depending on the necessity. No? But the standard is, I think, 4 themes. At least meron tayong 4 na themes na di-discuss, and each theme must have the synthesis. Okay, so the last paragraph of each theme must have the synthesis. Once again, synthesis is reorganization. Okay, you will be reading once again your previous literature, and then, or your discussion on the let's say you have the 4 paragraphs, and then the 5th paragraph is all about the synthesis of the theme. You must read the previous paragraphs to come up with that synthesis. Once again, synthesis is defined as the reorganization, the reframing of those concepts and ideas that we encounter in the previous paragraphs. So meaning, in other words, if you want to simplify the terminology, we are going to write what we've learned and what we want to highlight. Okay, that's very necessary to highlight. It is because it is very well connected to our study. So wag tayong lalayo lagi dun sa konsepto na we have this synthesis. It is because this part will support, okay, will support further the conduct of the study. Okay, and then we have the theoretical framework and the conceptual framework. But let's go back into literature review. After having, if you have those 4 themes, so you have those 4 syntheses. Okay, so synthesis, meaning each theme will be having 1 synthesis, and then you have, if you have 4 paragraph, you have 4 synthesis. Baka ano tayo sa computation, sorry. And then we have, and then at the last part, okay, after coming up or discussing all those themes, the last paragraph before we end the literature review is the general synthesis, wherein you're going to recombine. So I will just give you a tip on how to create the general synthesis. You will just focus on the synthesis of each paragraph to come up with the general synthesis. Okay? But now, once again, we try not to repeat. Okay? We will not, limit, or we will not be having the manifestation of redundancy, okay? Conceptual redundancy. And then theoretical framework and conceptual framework. Okay, so literature review, it is very important part of our paper because it validates once again our ideas, and it allows the researcher and even the audience to be in the ocean, in the ocean at the same time, in the deeper part of the ocean of those ideas. So meaning, it's all about the familiarity of those important concepts, of those important perspectives that are well connected to our study. So we are doing this literature review because we want you to be knowledgeable about the context or about the study you are conducting. So you will not be only focusing on one idea or 2 ideas, but you will be focusing on numerous ideas for you to weigh, so that when you go to the interpretation part, you will be able to weigh which of those literature or which of those ideas really support your findings. Okay, because not all the things that we're going to write in our literature will support our findings. Those are the possible explanation of what will be discussed in chapter 4, specifically if that is a quantitative research. The difference between quantitative and qualitative research, I think qualitative research requires lesser literature. It is because we don't want to have those assumptions, okay, a lot of assumptions about the phenomenon, because in qualitative we want it as authentic as it is, and we don't want to pollute our mind with those assumptions, with those presumed ideas, Because if ever we will be, I think that's the best approach for me in qualitative. If ever our conceptual container is already full with those assumptions, and therefore I think it will somehow manipulate the results of our study in terms of qualitative research. But in talking about quantitative, it must. Okay, I let me use the word must. There is a necessity for us to have this well organized literature. Okay, it is because we can only deepen our interpretations and our explanation about those numerical values by means of connecting that to the previous studies and to those different references that we reviewed. That's I think the difference between qualitative and quantitative. Okay? Kaya pansin po nyo, pag qualitative, napakahaba ng chapter 4. Okay? Unlike kapag quantitative, so I think may presentation of the table and then explanation. But I think para sa akin mas ma-elaborate kasi pag qualitative. Okay. Demonstrate, since sabi ko nga yung familiarity, it could be the synthesis or summary of a specific idea coming from a reference. So, in literature review, it may be a summary. Okay? You may include a summary of a specific idea, or it may also include the synthesis. Okay? Anong pagkakaiba ng dalawa? Summary, kumbaga, pag sa buhok, pag sabi natin summary, pinikli lang natin ang buhok. Pinutulan lang natin yung buhok. From mahabang buhok, pinutulan lang natin siya. But when we say synthesis, pinutulan na natin ang buhok at the same time, kinulayan pa natin, kinulutan pa natin. So nagkaroon ng reorganization, nagkaroon ng bagong forma. That's what we call synthesis. Okay? So summary and synthesis. I just connect that to the grooming of girls. Okay. So the same process of crafting the background of the study. Okay. The same. So we'll be having the process of sewing, fitting, and cohering. So once again, those pieces will be put together to form a new whole. And that new whole is a product of our creativity, is a product of our in-depth understanding about the phenomenon we are studying or investigating. Okay, example of literature, you must have your introductory paragraph, wherein in the introductory paragraph, you may introduce the different topics to be discussed. Okay? And then, for instance, I have here the first theme, which is STEM and 21st century. Look at this. In the literature review, hindi na siya review of related literature. The traditional way is we have a separate review of conceptual literature and review of research literature. But in coming up with this, in the new format, it is integrative in the sense that there is the intersection of those ideas coming from both research and conceptual leads. So, magkakalahok na siya. And I believe, and in writing our thesis, you imagine yourself also writing a book. Okay? Because there is a tendency that a dissertation or a master's thesis may be also converted into a book. Okay? If you will recall, sabi ko nung when I was in college, pag pinag-aaralan namin, halimbawa, yung professional education, ang daming mga themes. Sabi ko, saan kaya galing itong, halimbawa, characteristic of good assessment? Saan kaya ito galing? Yung mga important themes na dinidiscuss sa yung pala galing siya sa research. So it could be converted into books. Okay? Into a book, a very good book about education, about educational processes. Okay, so para mas synthesize siya, para hindi masyado you may have 3 to 4 pages per theme. Kasama na po yung general, yung synthesis. So normal siguro kung mayroon kayong 4 na paragraphs, in-depth paragraphs, and then the 5th paragraph may be for the synthesis of the theme. Okay, the last paragraph may express the synthesis of each theme, and then 1 to 2 paragraphs of the literature review session may communicate the general synthesis. So where are you going to reference your general synthesis? To the individual synthesis. Okay? So an example of synthesis. dati kasi ang practice kapag synthesis, binabanggit pa din yung mga authors. Dito hindi na po. Okay? No need to write, let's say, based, let's say, according to, and so forth. Hindi na kailangan. So, it's all about, and then, you try also to, to accentuate connecting those ideas to your current problem or current scenario. Okay? Kaya hindi siya laging mawawala. Okay. What about the theoretical framework? So collection of interrelated concepts. So the theoretical framework will, if you have the hypothetical question, if you have the hypothesis, I think you come up with that hypothesis. It is because you base your statement to the discussion in your theoretical framework. So for those checkers of the paper, and to our to those panel members and even the advisors and our students, okay, the hypothetical questions or hypothetical objectives, the hypothesis of the study, and the theoretical framework are interconnected from one another. It is because you relate those two attributes, by the way, or those two variables. It is because you read or you discovered that there are studies correlating those two. Okay? So what things you will measure and what statistical relationships you will look for. Because later on, in explaining the result of your, in explaining whether your hypothesis is accepted or not, in explaining that, your ideas will come from your theoretical framework, by the way, and some concepts from your literature review. If there are some concepts that are strongly uh, that strongly established, okay, that strongly support your no, your findings, okay, in terms of your hypothesis. So as logical structure. So saan ba? Ano ba yung features ito? May citation din po ito, okay? There are also key concepts, and then you must also highlight the notable relationships of those variables or concepts. Okay? Because basically, as you review the different references, you will notice that there are articles or there are papers suggesting that there is no significant relationship between these two variables. But there are articles or there are some papers saying that there is significant relationship. You explain in this part why there is significant relationship in this paper and why there is no significant relationship in that paper. And then it's time for you in your paper, it's time for you to settle the gap, settle the conflict. And it's a gap, by the way. If there are two papers having two different interpretations or two different claims about the relationship of those two variables, then therefore that is also a research gap. Okay, sabi ko nga, rational cannot be, is not only discussed singularly at the background of the study. It may further be established in the chapter 2 kasi mas malalim ang discussion. And then the most relevant theories and models have been evaluated. Okay, so ano pa ba? Yeah, so you may also justify your hypothesis using the theoretical framework. Gusto nating itama yung idea that pag theoretical framework, ano yung mga approaches, ano yung mga learning theories, hindi lang po siya sa ganun eh. So you will look at your statement of the problem, showing your variables, and you discuss those variables, the relationship of those variables, the possible relationships of those variables in the theoretical framework. Okay, theoretical framework, it will be used, use theory as basis for interpreting results. So, nabanggit ko na ito kanina. And then, it may challenge your preliminary claim about the relationships of those variables. Sabi, critic or challenge a theory. Okay. So, kaya po, sabi nga natin, di ba lahat naman ng theories meron siyang weaknesses. Okay, so, your study may support the theory, it may also critique the theory. Okay, sabi nga natin, theory is relevant to specific situations, but not all situations it's relevant. Okay, so kaya nga hindi pa siya law. or hindi pa siya principle eh. Theory pa lang siya. But those theories are necessary as our understanding for us to deal with different things, specifically in handling our learners. Okay. Okay, so we have the theoretical framework sample. So you have the conceptual citation or conceptual literature. It may be 2 to 3 pages. Okay, let's proceed now to conceptual framework. Actually, napaka-nipis nga lang po ng boundary between theoretical framework and conceptual framework because conceptual, from the word concept, it is general. It is more, I think it's more general than theoretical. Theoretical is specific. Conceptual is general terminology. So, I mean, there are also some papers considering conceptual framework alone as part of the paper. So, dito po, pag sabi conceptual framework, so it also gives the comprehensive understanding of a phenomenon, and also it also explains the key concepts or the variables and how it relates to your study. Yun kasi ang nawawala minsan sa theoretical framework and conceptual framework. Nalilimutan ng researcher na i-connect or establish yung connection ng dinidiscuss niya sa current study. So that's very important. Pansin niyo po, lahat ng parts, even yung mga synthesis ng literature, kinoconnect siya dun sa necessity kung bakit nagkakandak tayo ng study. Okay? So sabi natin dito ay yung relationship between them. May relationships din. Okay? So sa features, the same din. So the theoretical, the conceptual framework may be also utilized in explaining the claims of your study, the primary claims of your study. Okay. Sabi natin dito, test whether a concept holds a specific context. Okay, and then it may also a basis of our interpretation, and it's also a way of recombining different ideas to formulate or to form a new insight about a specific context of our study. Okay. So in doing our conceptual framework, so we have the following components, or maybe we have the representations. Okay, so for the box, it could be for the variable, arrow for the influence, the relationship, and then the line for the connection. So for the correlation or for the relationship. Okay, so for instance, I have an example of a simple conceptual framework. Okay. Yan. Sabi natin, is there a necessity for us to have this graphical representation? I think kapag conceptual framework, mas maganda kung meron siyang graphical representation. Sa theoretical, mas maganda rin. Alam niyo po kung bakit meron laging parang sinasabi na parang graphical organizer para may mga may mga audience tayo na visually inclined sila. So pag nakita sila ng figure, mas naiintindihan nila. So we cater a lot of styles of our audience. Okay, here is a sample of framework. Ayan. So, hindi na tayo IPO model. Okay, para po dun sa ng IPO model, hindi na po ganun yung ginagawa natin. So it may be under the umbrella of this sample, or it could be more simplified. Okay. So for instance, they have their assessment and feedback. Look at this. In the light of this conceptual spectra, assessments such as that for learning, and blah, 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 are essential composition of pedagogical model. Let's see. Ano ba yung pedagogical model? Yun yung output ko. Am I right? So look at this. The last sentences is claiming that these important concepts are important. This concept is important to be discussed, okay, to be included. It is because it is one of the important components of the pedagogical model that I will be developing. Okay, so that's sabi, scrutinized assessment tools identifying evaluation strategies at the classroom level will lead to the discovery of contextualized and practical elements of the model. So you are also telling about the purpose while you are writing about this one. Okay. Okay, tapos na tayo sa chapter 2. Fasten your seatbelt kasi medyo mabilis pa rin ang ating pagbiyahe patungo sa pagkatuto ng pagsusulat sa ating academic paper. Let's have now the reinventing chapter 3, creating new pathways of research procedures. Chapter 3 is a measure of creativity of the students. It is because in doing academic paper, it is in the form of basic research. Then therefore, if it is a basic research, our students or together with the advisors, we are expecting them to uh, recombine, okay, the available procedures, the available methods from different preferences. Okay, so kaya reinvention. Okay, we are not going to copy, okay, the the methods utilized by a specific researcher. Kahit sabihin natin, eh sir, parehas lang naman po ang ginawa ng isa at nung it could be in the inspiration of that methodology, of that procedures, but as a student, as a researcher, okay, you're expected to create your own. Okay, you try to consider other factors. You may add, let's say kung ito yung study ka, pareha siya, nakita mo, maganda itong gayahin na lang. Pag ginaya natin yan, there's no such creativity. No? There's no such innovation in our writing. Okay? And what will happen now is there will be monotony of discussion in the chapter 3 as what we are experiencing now in reading, example, the older thesis and dissertations na pag ito quantitative, alam na ang magiging laman ng chapter 3. Pagdating sa data gathering instrument, ito nang didiscussin. Ganito na yung didiscuss natin. But I think si advisor at saka si researcher, student researcher must be inventive, okay? Must be proud or must be confident that based on her or his readings, these are the possible combinations, recombinations of those procedures, okay? So chapter 3, research method and procedures. So based on the format, we have the research design, subject of the study, the instruments to be utilized, the data gathering procedures, data analysis, statistical treatment of data, if it is quantitative and thematic, if it is qualitative in general. And then we add also the ethical considerations. It is because there are some journals that are looking for the ethics considered by the researcher, specifically in conducting qualitative research. Napakahigpit natin dyan because the researcher will be having primary data coming from the participants. Okay, so we say we say they are participants. It is because there will be a closer relationship between the researcher and the participant. So it's quite different from the quantitative that will just be having the data privacy and ano pa ba? I think that's the very important thing in quantitative. But in qualitative, you need to consider your relationship with your participants, the manner you will be asking questions, the limitation of the participation of the participants, okay, the rights, okay, of the participants. Okay, we always consider the rights of the participants, lalo na kapag minor de edad or not below 18, those our learners. Okay, so research design introduces the general design based on types of research. So it may also provide a specific design. So it may employ quantitative research design specifically. Is it descriptive survey? Ano pa ba? Is it correlational? Is it structural equation modeling? Is it linear regression analysis? So those are the possible specifics, okay, of quantitative designs. Is it pre-test, post-test design, experimental design, okay? So even experimental designs, there are other types under it. Okay, so it's also there's also some literature-based diagrams. You may also include some literature-based diagrams. Let's say in employing pre-test post-test design, you may find some visualizations on how to conduct that process. Okay. Let's say kung siya ay experimental, so you have the diagram, we have the control group, we have the experimental group, and we have these variables. What are those constant variables, and what are those variables to be measured? Okay, so Yun. So dito, an event sa research design, you may also have the overview of the research procedures. It could be in tabular form. Such, let's say, for example, what are the phase, quantitative or qualitative ba siya? If it is mixed methods design, and then sample, anong gagamitin mong sample doon? The data collection to be employed, and the instrument, and even the data analysis. Okay, so you may have this sample, and don't forget, okay, in telling, okay, and in revealing the design you will be incorporating in your paper, at the end, the last sentences must explain why you choose that design. Okay, you must justify. Okay, you must justify why you choose case study over grounded theory, why you chose uh, linear regression rather than correlational study, for instance. Okay, for example, kung mga ganun-ganun lang. So you may establish the last sentences may express the reasons why you employ this kind of design. Okay, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyong mga visual representations coming from books. But don't forget to have the kung saan galing siya. Okay? So since case study, ako ang case study, may iba-iba pa akong klase. Meron tayong simple case at meron tayong multiple case. Sa multiple case, meron pa tayong dalawa. We have the holistic and we have the embedded. Okay? What specific case study you will be employing? So in this case, I apply embedded multiple case study design. And then here is also another add-ons for the panel members and for those audience to track, okay, easily the process that you employed in your study. You may have this table. You have the phases, the sample, the data collection and instrument, the data analysis. Ayan. So nakalagay na siya dyan. And then later on, i-discuss nyo yung isa-isa dun sa susunod ng mga paragraphs. So meron tayong organization. And then what about the subject of the study? So you may include the number of your subjects or of your samples, and at the same time, you may also reason out. Okay, you may state the reason why those are your chosen participants, why they are your chosen groups to be responding in your questionnaire, in your researcher-made questionnaire. In the researcher-made questionnaire, rather. Okay? There's always some justification. And then provide data table for distribution. Okay? You may also provide the data table for the distribution of the participants. Specifically for instance, as example, you may also justify why you have equal number of male and female. Okay? Kasi may ganun eh. Why you have more female than male. Okay? Kasi isang isang feature yan minsan sa pagkuha ng mga respondents or participants natin. Alin na mas madami, lalaki, babae? Okay, bakit mo pinagparehas ang bilang ng lalaki at babae? Okay, what literature supports the manner you choose your participants? Kung random naman siya, walang problema. Random naman pala. But in dealing with qualitative research, sometimes we also consider the gender of our participants, whether they are male or female, because we believe that they have this different mental tendencies in answering the different issues. Let's say your study is all about the coping mechanisms of teachers. So magkaiba ng pagko-cope ang isang babae at ang isang lalaki. That's why you consider that in your study. So you have the justification. Provide the data table for distribution of respondents, the same with this one. And then the data gathering instrument, pag quantitative, it may be in the form of questionnaire, and qualitative. Now may tanong tayo, sir, paano po pag adapted ng questionnaire? Let's say nakita po kami ng kaparehas parallel study na questionnaire, na standardized na po siya. Can we use that? Yes, you can use that. The dean will allow you to use that questionnaire or that instrument, provided that you will come up with the reliability test, and at the same time, it may also undergo exploratory factor analysis. Kasi specifically, halimbawa, bakit sir ganun kung pumayag naman hong gagamitin na po sabit na po kami ay nakakaano na at least po yun is standardized na. It is, I think it's reliable with that specific group of people, lalo na kung ang instrument ay nanggaling ba ng US. So magkaibang Amerikano at Pilipino. Okay? There are two different contexts. Being an American and being a Filipino are two different contexts. That's why those instruments that we say applicable for our paper, mag-undergo pa rin siya ng pilot testing. Mag-undergo ng reliability test. Pag lumabas na mataas pa rin, reliable pa rin, that's time for us. I think it's an indicator, it's a go signal for us to reuse the instrument. But there's also another way kung talagang yun na nga siya. Kasi yung sunod na process will be exploratory factor analysis wherein, di ba, originally yung nasa questionnaire ay nakagroup na siya. By means of the process of exploratory factor analysis, nare-regroup siya. Depende sa konteksto ng mga Pilipino. May item na dati nandito sa theme na to, sa theme number 5, nung ma-explore natin, magkaroon ng factor analysis, napapunta siya sa theme 1 because it's in the context of Filipino learners or in the context of Filipino teachers. Okay? So ang sagot pwede, basta magdadaan ulit siya sa reliability, validity and reliability tests. Okay? And then qualitative interview guide, documents, yan. Ito na yung mga kalimitang ginagamit natin. Okay, anong oras na ba? Yeah, I have still 10 minutes. Okay? And 28 seconds. So in here, since po kasi ang ginamit ko yung mixed methods, ito yung mga description ko ng mga instruments na ginamit ko. So I have the focus group discussion guides and protocol. Di lang po tayo basta-basta nagpapa-focus group discussion. A focus group discussion is just like a seminar program. Okay? Naka-program talaga siya. Hindi pwedeng, tayo mo na maggrupo at tatanungan tayo kung ano, hindi po ganun siya. It must be structured. Okay? Para din talaga siyang seminar. Meron kang preliminary words, and then after that, parang nagpapatraining ka din, and then magkakaroon ka ng groupings, and then they will come up with that output. And that output will be utilized for elaborating the findings of your study. Class observation tool. And in quantitative, I have here the following. So, for questionnaire, ang sabi natin ay there's no need to, I think, magkaroon pa ng themes na may construction, period. Tapos, in constructing the question, blah, blah, blah. I think based on our dean, ito ay dire-diretso na. Wala na siyang mga subtitles. Kumbaga, dire-diretso na yung pagdidiscuss about how you developed the questionnaire. Our term is development. It is because our instrument undergo construction and validation. Kaya development ang tawag nun. Pag sabi yung developed, kinonstruct at the same time, vinalidate din siya. Nag-undergo ng iba't ibang mga tests. Okay, questionnaire adopted, ito yon yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina, then standardized test. Okay. Pag mga standardized tests, I think there's no need to conduct pilot testing kasi standardized test. Lalo na kapag ang problem is all about, let's say, motivation, or interest, yung mga something na aptitudinal siya. So meron naman tayong mga standardized test na ginagamit siya. Okay. So qualitative. Okay. Kayo naman, kayo naman ang researcher. So you will be the one who will tell the story behind how you come up with interview guide or performance-based assessment tools, example, rubrics, and then observation tool, and then those different materials, how you choose them. So kapag qualitative, pag gumamit ka ng itong mga to, you try to justify also why you are going to use these pertinent documents, why you're going to utilize these videos and pictures as part of your study, these artifacts. Okay, so in data gathering procedures, we have the quantitative and qualitative data, that's mixed methods. Yan. So ito naman ay natuturo na sa inyo sa research methodology. So no need to elaborate, but basically, you have, I think, your chapter 3 must be well explained, okay, and well justified. Okay, kasi the basis of how truthful your chapter 4 is will be dependent on the quality of chapter 3. Nakalimitan na wala lang natin ginagawa before. Parang okay, copy lang tayo ng mga ng iba't ibang mga ng chapter 3 ng ibang mga academic papers. But basically, the chapter 3 will establish the truthfulness, the rigor of our paper. Okay, the ethical considerations. Okay, so sabi ko nga sa quantitative, napaka-minimal lang ng kailangang obserbahan dyan pagdating sa ethics. More on data privacy, informed consent form. Okay, but when we deal with qualitative, yan, dito tayo medyo sensitibo. Because you will directly or indirectly observe people, okay? And we must always protect their rights. Okay, yung karapatan nila bilang participant. Okay? Basically, a research should not destroy a specific institutional reputation. It will not also destroy or will not reveal the real identity of our participants, specifically if we will be dealing with those sensitive issues. Okay, I think may nabasa ako sa Philippine Normal University na let's say about sa mga prostitutes naman, parang about academic resiliency of prostitute students. See? May mga ganon. So it's a reality, di ba? Kung mga prostitute yung i-interviewin mo, lagyan mo ba yung mga pangalan nila? Siyempre, you will protect their rights, okay? their identity. Okay, and by the way, we will be developing checklists whether those conditions are observed during the conduct of the study. Okay. Pero pag science, yung mga science teachers, pag let's say for example, if we will be dealing with life, let's say an organism, let's say cat or dogs, and we will be killing a specific living entity, and then it must require merong form na binibigay ang Intel. Ang Intel, that's an organization of research, scientific research about those things that must be observed in dealing with those organisms. Kahit nga lamok ngayon, bawal patayin eh. I don't know. So may ganung basta mahigpit. But since we are dealing with education, sometimes pag qualitative, our participants are students, so we will observe at most ethical considerations. Okay, so what about chapter 4? Intensifying chapter 4. So the in-depth interpretations, generating implications and insights. So dito naman, sabi nga, if it is quantitative, no need to verbalize the different values and ranks and those stats in the table. You go directly with the findings or the trends of the data. You may regroup them. Okay, pwede mong i-group yung mga items. And kasi sabi natin analysis when we say analysis from a whole, we're going to cluster them, we're going to separate them into pieces, and we're going to scrutinize each piece. And then we're going to form again, then after scrutinizing each piece, we're going to bring them back all to that specific whole after finishing that analysis. So it could be done in interpreting the results. So it may be yung ating title will be yung noun form of our objectives, and then we have our tabular presentation. But once again, it may be also in the form of other presentations aside from tabular presentation. If the advisor sees that it could be very convenient to show or to showcase the table, the data using the pie graph or the bar graph or the pictograph or other representations, then be it. Okay, mas kung yun ang nakikita mas maganda. Okay, lalo na those highly descriptive. Okay, highly descriptive. Kapag now the question is, paano sir pagka qualitative? You can also organize your thoughts or the different data that you gathered using the qualitative design. Later, I'm going to show you samples. Okay, and then analysis. Ito yung mga parts, no? data table, analysis and interpretation, implications grounded on literature, lalo na kapag ka siya ay quantitative. The question is, what about pag qualitative? It is optional. Pag qualitative, it is optional whether we're going to connect the findings to literature or not. Bakit optional pag qualitative? It is because we are talking already of reality. Okay? We are talking already reality. We have that first-hand experience. We see, okay, by means of our two eyes and by means of our senses, we immerse in that experience, and that's why there's no need there's no need for us to for those ideas to be validated by a secondary references. What I mean is, pag qualitative, it's the authentic and the authentic data. That's why it's optional whether the student or the advisor will advise the student researcher to connect the findings of qualitative using qualitative design to the different references. But I think it's an optional based on my reference is Creswell. Creswell is a very good writer of research books. Okay, so implications grounded in literature and then insightful synthesis. Pag synthesis is what you've learned about those discussions. Okay, then overviewing and then enumerating. So important points in making your interpretations in chapter 4. You have the overview. How do you look at the table? Okay, what are those items related to teaching and learning, related to assessment, related to curriculum? How would you describe them? So overviewing, and then enumerating. You convert objects into noun once again. So the same with this one. Yeah. And then we have the presentation of procedures. Presentation procedure, we're going to have the visualization, yung ating table. Ito yung sample ko sa case study. Okay? Participant A, these are the saturated responses. Ayan, time na ako. So allow me to extend siguro mga 5 minutes pa po. Ayan. So, 1 hour and 15 minutes po yung sinet ko. So, allow me po to extend at least 5 minutes po to 10 minutes. Yeah, so ito po yung sample ng pagka-qualitative. So, you have the saturated responses about curriculum, instruction, feedback system, and learning environment. So, these are the different, the saturated. Meaning, pag sabi natin saturated, maaaring naulit-ulit lang siyang sinabi. Ito na yung ibig sabihin niya. Ito yung pinaka nagre-represent ng idea na yon. Okay, so the same with this one. Yan. So I have curriculum, outlining, sub-theme, saturated codes. And then, itong mga codes na to, kaino ko siya nakita, saang mga cases ko siya nakita. Yan. Ito, binigyan ko siya ng sample kasi pag qualitative, we do not know how we're going to organize, how we're going to present our data in tabular form. So these are just example. But you could invent your own table for the qualitative data. And then for the quantitative, the same lang din naman. Pero ngayon hindi na natin nirarank, no? Ina-arrange natin siya ng kung ano yung rank number 1, yung nakalagay sa number 1. Okay, kaya nawala na po yung rank dito. And then we just have the weighted mean and the verbal interpretation. And then we have the visual graphic organizer and then the title. Okay, so interpreting, so you're going to communicate the meanings of, let's say, pag sabing verbally interpreted as strongly agree. Anong ibig sabihin nun? What do you mean by that? Okay, you try to explain that. You will not only write about the value or the verbal interpretation of the numerical value, but at the same time you will go deeper from that. Okay, bakit sila nag-agree? Okay? Anong ibig sabihin nun? Okay, diagnosing the trend. Let's say what is the trend of the data? Most of the question is among all those items in our questionnaire, which of those obtained, let's say, which of those items that are interrelated from one another obtained the highest percent of the respondents. Example. So in general lang siya. So hindi na tayo yung rank 1 with a verbal interview, hindi na po tayo nagaganon ngayon. Okay, diretso na tayo sa mismo anong sinasabi ng verbal interpretation na yon. Then the findings will be in the form of cause and effect statements, okay, should be supported by literature. Then we have the synthesis. What the insight? What is the insight that we obtain based on the findings and the interpretations of the data that we discuss in the preliminary paragraphs. So we have the insightful and synthesis per table, per objective, and in general. Okay. Note, there's no need to convert the table into words. Sinabi ko na po sa inyo kanina. And chapter 4, it should be the most pageful chapter for it measures the researcher way of critical thinking. Ito yung evidences that you will graduate in our institution with developed critical thinking. Okay, that you have a lot of passages and openings where you can start your argument, you can start your ideas, your perspectives about a specific matter or issues or topic. Ayan. So, example po natin, meron tayong introductory paragraph. Ayan, ito yung sample natin, yung general trend. As green in table 1.4 can be known, it can be noted that the presented pedagogical practice significantly highlighted two major dimensions. Look at that. So ako bilang si researcher, nakita ko yung mga items pala, pwede ko siyang i-regroup sa dalawa. Sabi ko, highlighted two major dimensions of classroom science instruction, such as teaching approaches and strategies and learning activities utilized and provided by teachers in realizing the standards and target competencies of the curriculum. Out of 15 presented practices, the participants assessed 12 items expressing strong agreement based on their personal experiences in teaching specialized science courses. So napansin niyo po ba na nag-ulit ba ako ng sinasabi natin sa table? Hindi. So, nakita na natin yung general trend nung data dun sa based on the table. So, just an example. Then I have some, kasi qualitative tayo, no? I have some verbatim statements about supporting the findings of the study. Ayan. And then I have the syntheses and yeah. So, now, pagdating natin sa output, ito din ito yung kalimitan na neglect din natin sa output. I think sa part na yon, we do not put the output, the actual output in the chapter 4. Sa natin na ilalagay sa appendices po. So, anong lalamanin nung objective for the output? It will include the discussion on how you come up with the output. The abstraction of the output. Okay?
Sir, excuse me, sir, Dennis?
Ayan. Yes, Paul.
Hello, sir. The dean is asking you to take your time, all the time that you need in discussing chapter 4 and 5 po. Okay. Because she believes it's one of the most crucial part of the research.
Okay, thank you, Sir Clint.
Thank you, sir. Thank you po.
Okay po. And then, nag-timer nga po ako kasi nahiya naman po ako sa mga susunod na speakers. But by the way, since...
No, sir. No, sir. We have enough time. We have plenty of time for them to... Thank you, sir. Continue po.
Okay. It's an emerging necessity nowadays, specifically that we are in the transitioning period of writing the academic papers of our college. So itong abstraction part, no, napakahalaga. The students may discuss about, halimbawa, kung action plan. Pinakamababaw na po nga yung maging output ay action plan. That's in the traditional context, pinaka basic na siya. Let's say for example, action plan. The students may discuss about why is it that the indicators that he or she included in the action plan are those indicators. Okay, what are the bases? So the participant will in this part, the participant will be utilizing those learnings that he or she obtained from the previous discussions in discussing the data. So dito makikita how if the output is research based or not. Kasi kaya nga po tayo nagkaroon ng research for our output to become research based. And our output should not be conclusive that we just have that output because we just want that output. Okay, the output must be based on the compositional content of chapter 4, the previous discussions. So you will explain if that is a worksheet. So you'll explain each part. Ano nilalaman ng example ng motivational activity, and then let's say for example, authentic activity. Ano nilalaman? Let's say those are the parts. Anong nilalaman ng mga parts na yun? And what are your basis of putting those parts, of considering those principles in that kind of in that part of your output. So ito po dapat yung nilalaman nito. Na minsan ang makikita lang natin dun sa paper ay parang ano lang, the researcher proposed and blah 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 that will be utilized by science teachers in teaching blah 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 example. Parang ganun lang nakikita lang natin, napaka-ikli. Wherein it is also important to persuade also the panel members that your output is really based on the findings, based on the core learnings of your study. So dito natin mababasa na talagang yung output is relevant to the findings, to the insights or to the learning that the researchers obtained. Okay? So abstraction process. And then the features of the output, sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, and even the actual output. Basically, kung yan ay instructional material, you may also discuss about the approaches or the learning principles that you employ, okay, that you consider in making the output. Okay? Kasi meron tayong palimitan kasi sa chapter 2 sa literature review, let's say ang output is all about making workbook, then meron tayong literature review about making a workbook. So pwedeng i-base doon ni researcher yung preliminary part ng paano ginawa yung output. And then yung mismong actual content ng output must be based on the results of the study, yung mga naunang mga data. So dun makikita how connected the output to the findings. Kasi sabi natin, the output is nonsensical if it is just based on the opinion, based on the perspective of the researcher. Kasi sabi nga natin, kaya nga nag-research tayo para yung output natin is also a research-based. Okay? So, yun. Hindi siya nakalagay doon. So, bigyan ko kayo ng example ng dito sa abstraction of the output. Okay. Yan lang po. Nalimutan ko lang siyang ilagay. Yan lang po. So para makita ng ating mga estudyante and even ng ating mga kasamahan, paano ba ginagawa itong abstraction of the output? So akala natin ay tapos na. Nakagawa na ako ng output. But actually, napakahalaga po nun, ng part na yun. Ito po siya. Ayan, sorry. Ayan, ito. Wait lang po, ito po yung ating output. Look at this how I have the abstraction of my ang akin po kasing output ay model. So ito po yung ginawa natin. Yan. Ito po siya. Yan. Let me share to you this. The actual paper. Nakita po ba? Sir Clint, nakikita po ba yung
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ayan. So, ito po yun sa model development. So, kung meron kayong, let's say, workbook, edi workbook, let's say, crafting or devising the activity sheets. Yan. Kasi yung last objective. Dapat doon, dito, nakalagay din yung discussion natin. Look at this. How I develop the model. So, ito po yung model development. And then I have here the summary of the process on how I come up with the model. So, from the pedagogical practices into employing the mixed methods designs, until I come up with the pedagogical themes and subthemes for the model. Ayan, nakalagay din dito yung mga prosesong ginawa. And then I have here the exploratory factor analysis kung bakit ako nag-come up doon. Kasi kung tutusin, pwede ilagay ko lang dito, a model is proposed and validated and blah, blah, blah. Konting isang paragraph lang. But look at how we do the abstraction of the output. Kasi napakahalaga din po nito. It will also persuade the the curriculum or for those beneficiaries na ay consider ko to kasi talagang ay ganda, align na align talaga ang results dun sa naging output ng study. So ito po yun. Meron ako ditong mga tabular data saturations. Okay, hanggang sa makagawa tayo ng yan, may discussion po yan. The first domain, may nakalagay yan based on, saan ko to kinuha tong discussion na the first domain curriculum contains 27 items or 42 point, saan ko po siya kinuha? Sa mga nauna. Sa mga nauna kong discussions. Okay? Yeah. Ito yung feature. And then finally, 3 thematic components such as effective teaching blueprints, relevant instructional designs, and research-based instructional breakthroughs were conceptually operationally created aligned to the primary findings with their corresponding themes. Ipinapaliwanag ko po dito kung bakit yun ang naging laman ng pedagogical model ko. Kung kayo ay worksheet, bakit yun ang naging laman? Bakit yun ang mga naging parts ng inyong worksheet? So it should not be based on your own decision, but it must be based on the findings of your study. Ayan, sabi ko dito, having the union and intersection of both quantitative and qualitative data, the second domain instruction is contextually and lexically determined. Ayan, saan ito nanggaling? Yan, may mga pinanggalingan po. I-justify. Let's say, in the action plan, saan nanggaling tong iyong resources? Anong pinagbasehan mo nito? Sasabihin mo, sir, kasi dun sa aking challenges obtained by the experienced by the respondents, isa po ang resources sa pinoproblema na. That's why in the action plan, I included resources. That's how you're going, that's just a sample, no? On how we're going to connect the output to the findings of our study. So hindi lang siya yung i-explain natin nag-develop tayo, tapos na. Hindi po. Abstraction is very important. Kasi dito nakikita how relevant the output is. Yeah. Kasi medyo ang akin po kasing yung model, kaya po hanggang sa nagkaroon ako ng tabular form, ng model, tapos, ayan. Diniscuss ko na pong isa-isa yung components ng model. Medyo mahaba po to kasi, alam naman po nga natin, so it's a dissertation, so Doctor of Philosophy, so our role is to create something new, new philosophical perspectives in terms of teaching and learning process, specifically in science education. I have also the graphical representation. Kung ganitong model na gawa mo, abay, isa-isa mong i-explain yan. Bakit mo nakuha tong positive and appreciative psychosocial environment? Saan mo to, anong pinagbasehan mo nito, quantitatively and qualitatively? So that's the manner on how we're going to craft the objectives, the output of our study. Yan. So meron pa ako ditong kasi validation din kasi ako sa development, construction and validation. Kaya meron din ako ditong way, paano ko masasabi na validated at talagang tamang-tama yung model na ginawa ko based on the validation processes na ginawa ko. So may abstraction. Yeah. So I hope na nakita ng ating mga estudyante, mahabang-mahaba pa rin po ito. Kasi in-explain kong isa-isa how this pedagogical model is aligned. Example, to contextualize instruction, student-centered classroom. Saan ko to kinuha? Itong mga indicators na to sa framework po ng K-12. Kasi kailangan align tong pedagogical model natin sa framework ng ating basic education curriculum. Yan. Then model validation. Yan, nagkwento pa tayo, nag-tabular form tayo. Sa pagpapavalidate, nakalagay din yung mga yung mga responses. Ang nakalagay po dito yung mga saturated. Kumbaga, kung may 5 taong nagsalita na magkakaiba lang ang way ng pagsasalita, pero iisa lang naman ang pakahulugan, so that's the manner how we saturate. So pipili lang tayo ng representative response or representative answers. Ayan, nakalagay dito. Sino ang nagsabi nito? Yan, participant A1, A2, A3, M1, M3. Yan. Ang A po kasi administrator, ang M master teacher, ang H head teacher. Yan. Isabihin po niya. Yan. Tapos, just to highlight lang po para magkaroon tayo ng improvement din sa paper natin. Kasi ito kalimitan na neglect natin. So, Tigil na natin itong balik tayo sa ating presentation. Okay. Slideshow. Okay. Ayan. Okay, okay na po tayo. So I hope na maliwanag po sa ating mga estudyante yung part po na yon sa ating chapter 4. Ayan. So,
Sir, pwede magtanong?
Yes po, pwede po.
Sir, halimbawa yung output ng research ay isang result ng structural equation modeling.
Mm-hmm.
So, ibig sabihin, yung mismong final model ang ilalagay na output. Eh sabi mo dyan, pwedeng sa appendices siya. Eh pwede bang hindi?
Doc, yun pong
siya ay mismong nandyan at result siya ng discussions.
Mm-hmm. Nagets ko po yan. Yung mismo pong model, kasi hindi lang na, ang model po kasi hindi naman po yung result ng discussion ng relationships nung mga nakuha natin sa structural equation modeling. Am I right po? Kasi gagawa pa rin po talaga tayo ng paper na yun po mismo yung model na magpe-present mismo, mag-showcase ng mismo naging findings natin sa study natin. Nagets po ba natin? So, example po ako, in-explain ko pong isa-isa yung mga components. Pero out of that, nakagawa po tayo ng model. Ang model naman po, hindi naman po yung graphical representation lang, kundi yung content. Ano po? So, yung model is an academic discussion. Para siyang paper na kung saan mag-showcase ng kung ano yung mga naging results ng ating study. Kapag ka po structural equation modeling, kalimitan, ang nangyayari dyan, ina-explain natin ano ba yung mga mediator, halimbawa, itong dalawang variables na to, ano yung mga mediators niya, di ba ganun lang po yung na-explain natin kapag po structural equation modeling, alin ang independent variable, alin ang dependent variable, alin ang negative ang relationship, alin ang positive relationship, alin ang high correlation, alin ang positive correlation, alin ang negative correlation. Di po ba ganun nga po, Doc? Ang kapag po structural equation modeling, but in crafting the model, hindi na po ganun ang discussion. Ang discussion will be something that will be considered in planning, example, the curriculum, or in modifying the teaching and learning practices, para po siyang isang information dissemination material na ang gagawin niya based on those based on the structural equation modeling discussion.
Pero ang research questions niya, ang nasa objective is just the results of the model.
Kapag po ganun, Doc,
wala na kasing ibang naging tanong na gagawa ka pa ng parang pedagogical model, kundi ang output model ay yun mismong structural equation model. Hindi niya siya kailangang ilagay sa appendices. Kasi part na yun.
Kasi po yung nilalaman po kasi na structural equation modeling, pag yun ang inyong ginamit sa field, hindi po siya maiintindihan ng let's say hindi po kagad siya maiintindihan ng magi-implement or magko-consider nung equation na yon sa equation modeling sa field.
Pero sir, hindi na kasi part ng research niya yung magawa ng another, kundi ang kanyang research ay hanggang dun lang sa modeling, dun sa SSM.
Kung ganun po sir ang objective, di hanggang dun lang po ang kanya. Pero pag po ang kanyang nakalagay ay
pero kapag meron pa
gagawa siya ng model po talaga, kasi yung structural equation modeling po, it's a process po on how we're going to identify the relationships of the variable in in-depth manner. Pag sinabi po kasi nating magde-devise siya at magde-develop siya ng model out of the result of the structural equation modeling, iba pa po ang magiging output nun.
Okay.
Opo. Magbibigay po ako ng sample nung modeling, nung output ko po para makita niyo po yung pagkakaiba ng sinasabi po natin. Yan, maganda po yung tanong, sir. Nahanap ko lang po yung sensya na po kayo. Ayan. Kasi may model po akong ginawa, yung mismong yung mismo pong okay, ito po. Wait lang po. Nagkamali ako ng bukas. Ayan. Para po makita niyo lang yung mismong output. Ayan, ito po. Sana ito na po. Ayan, ito po yung yung model. Ayan, basta yung sinasabi po natin, yung output nga po, that's very important na ma-justify natin sa objective po na yun. Yun lang naman po yung inaano natin. Ngayon, in the case na structural equation modeling, it's just still in the statistical parang proseso pa rin po siya para ma-identify yung mga relationships. But kung talagang ang output niya ay isang model, kailangan niya po ulit magsulat ng parang libro siya eh. Basically po para siyang booklet na nagsasabi ng mga yung mas maiintindihan kasi po pag yung structural equation modeling yung pinakita natin, yung mga arrows and everything, hindi po agad siya maiintindihan ng common na audience. Ano po? Sige, pakita na lang natin yung dulo ng ko. Hindi ko makita. Ito po yun. Yan. Yung sa appendices ko na lang po papakita. Ayan. Bilis lang po ito. Ayan. Yun. Bilis na po. Ito po yung sinasabi kong model na output. Yan, wait lang po. Nasa appendices ko nga pala po yun. Yan, ito po. Ito po yung sinasabi natin. Para po hindi tayo malito. Yan. Ito po yun, yung sinasabi po natin na yung mismong model. Gagawa po talaga kayo ng parang libro siya. Yan, example, ganito po yung kanyang pagkaka-layout. Tapos nakalagay na po dyan yung mga parts. Why the model? The model is not. What is new in the model? Tanda mo ba, sir, ano po yung ginawa natin sa STEAM education? Ganito din po yung isang Dr. Pass po kasi yung naging So ganito po siya. Ito po yung nilalaman ng model natin. Yan. Para siyang babasahin. Na nakalagay na mismo yung for the general understanding of the public about your study, about sa output ng study mo.
So yan yung nakalagay sa appendices.
Opo, ito po yung nakalagay sa appendices. But yung explanation about sa structural equation modeling, iba po yun. Discussion po talaga yung gagawin doon. Opo. Yes po. Pero ito po, may discussion din kung bakit yun ang naging laman nung inyong model na ginawa. The model is not just the graphical representation. The model is the content itself. Yun po yung, pag sabi kasi ng ating model, it's all about, para siyang, it's conceptual. It's theoretical and at the same time, it's conceptual, it's procedural at the same time, nagbibigay ng parang enlightenment sa mga tao na halimbawa, I want to I want to modify the curriculum. So I will let's say for example I will let this as one of my bases in modifying the curriculum. Then I'm going to read about the curriculum. Yan, halimbawa, yan, pedagogical prism about curriculum. So ito na yung mga common insights na makikita niya na pwede niya maging basis para i-revise niya ang curriculum. So ganun po siya. Okay, balik uli po tayo sa ating PowerPoint presentation.
Salamat, Sir Dennis.
Apo, thank you very much po, sir. Maganda naman po yung inyong pagka-clarify na yan, sir. Ayan. Ayan, so dito na po tayo. Ayan. And then, let's proceed now to Chapter 5. Sa Chapter 5, ang napapansin din po natin na nagiging problema dito is, in our chapter, we have the summary, the conclusions, and recommendations. So, important point, sabi natin, yung summary is not reiteration. Sabi, we do not want to have redundancy once again. So, it's not a reiteration. This is reiteration but not a copy and paste from chapter 4. So, anong kailangan natin i-highlight? Anong ang ating gagawin sa chapter 5? Sabi natin, yung summary, it will highlight the chapter 4. It will give the highlights of chapter 4 na very well aligned. Kumbaga, yun, di ba nagkaroon kayo ng synthesis? Okay, you may rewrite the synthesis. Okay? In this part. Kasi hindi na natin kailangan banggitin pa ang mga values, no? Ito yung, ano yung kailangan natin i-highlight na findings ng study natin sa chapter 5. Yan, example, ito, say information gathered from survey, classroom observation, and face-to-face, and blah, 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 were analyzed using both quantitative and qualitative approaches that are aligned to the 4 priority domains, namely the following, and then which result to strong agreement in the presented pedagogical practices and generated 11 themes and 37 sub-themes respectively. Then example number 1, curriculum. Tingnan nyo po dito na wala na kayo makikita dito mga values, yung numerical values, and even the verbal interpretation. Saan ko binase ito? Binase ko ito sa synthesis ng aking study kasi yun na yung pinaka-learned insights based on the objective connected to the phenomenon you are investigating. And at the same time, pagka po magandang inyong summary in writing, in converting your dissertation or your master's thesis in journal type, madali na because your discussion may be sourced from the chapter 5. Pag ginawa nyo ng maayos tong summary. Kasi di ba kapag ka journal, limited lang ang number of words. Limited lang siya. We cannot include all our discussions in our thesis or in our dissertation. So para ito na po ang i-copy and paste natin doon. We try to put the table and this will be our discussion. Kasi ito na yung pinaka core idea of the things that we discussed in the chapter 4. Look at this, crafting lesson, effective lesson plans and daily lesson blogs, identifying blah 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 are important practices in outlining quality science instruction. In the process of improving the teaching and strategies and techniques, pedagogical, ayan, kita nyo po, ibang-iba na siya. So it's just the summary of the learned insights from chapter 4. So sa magbe-basis, pwedeng bumalik-balik dun sa mga previous paragraph, but at the same time, mas maganda mag-base kayo sa synthesis ng study ninyo. Okay. Curriculum. So important points ito po yung important points natin sa paggawa ng summary. Okay? You will not be having the copy and paste activity that you will copy this paragraph and then you're going to put that in the summary. Hindi po ganun. You will again resynthesize your learned insights from the synthesis of those discussions in chapter 4. Kaya po mahalaga yung synthesis, di ba? Nagpapaalaman siya sa atin coming up with a summarized ideas. Kasi yung synthesis, yun yung mag-highlight. Tama? Kaya nga nag-synthesis tayo kasi that synthesis will highlight the important things to consider. Among all, these are the important things na kailangan na matandaan, na kailangan na makonsider. So from pag ginawa natin siya ng maayos, madali lang gumawa ng chapter 5. Okay? Kumbaga, yun lang talagang pinakamatagal na gawin, yung chapter 4. Actually, in crafting the chapter 4, I spent, I think, mga 3 months. Yan, sa paggawa ng chapter 4. Na. So, sa paggawa po ng conclusion, the conclusion should not present the data gathered. Yung sasabihin ninyo na the respondents are moderately agreed, or halimbawa, yung parang you are basing your conclusion to the verbal interpretations of the numerical values or from the composite mean. Hindi po ganon. So this should present the core and synthesized findings, implication, insights that the researcher wanted to remember by the reader. So saan kayo magbe-base itong inyong conclusion? You will base your conclusion from the summary. Okay? Nagets po natin? Nakita natin yung domino effect na in making your chapter 4 very well, a very good chapter 4 will create a quality chapter 5, specifically the summary. And then, saan nyo i-base tong inyong conclusion? The conclusion will be based on your summary. Kasi yung summary, yun yung pinaka-highlights. And then, ang challenge sa iyo, iaano mo pa siya into into 2 or 3, into 2 to 3 or 1 to 2 sentences saying ano ba talaga yung meron sa study mo that's aligned to your objective. Okay? Laging nakatingin sa objective. Okay? Ayan. So look at this. Ito po yung aking conclusion. Kasi medyo madaming mahirap siyang ilagay sa isang sentence lang. So the presented findings of the researcher suggested that STEM, hindi po pagsabing suggested ay nagsasuggest po ako, but it means yun yung ibig sabihin yung implication niya. STEM science courses in senior high school program can be effectively delivered through pedagogical practices that are strongly connected to curriculum, instruction, feedback system, and learning environment. Additionally, kasi nagkaroon ako dito ng this 4 domains should be considered in planning, delivering, and monitoring and evaluating the quality and relevance STEM teaching and learning process in the Philippines. As the country erases its intertwined problems on science instruction, it is realized that the authentic reflections unravel pragmatic pedagogies that intervene effectively in the worsening educational scenarios. Thus, science teachers should develop a spectral sensitivity, igniting and evolving their creativity in crafting instructional designs applicable to diversity of learners. So that's how I conclude or how I write my conclusion. And imagine 3 lang po ang aking objectives. So that's why I have only 3 objectives. 3 conclusions. Pero mapapansin nyo po, medyo medyo wordy pa siya. This is because, kita nyo naman po yung pinagdaanan ng aking paper. I mean, it employs both quantitative and qualitative. So, para ma-showcase siya, ito yung nakikita ko para ma-showcase ng maganda yung mga dapat na matandaan ng reader sa aking dissertation. So, ito lang po yung lahat. Ayan. So, in writing your conclusion, sabi natin, synthesized. Saan magagaling ito? Ito po ay nanggaling sa summary. Sa summary ng about curriculum. Okay? And then, important points, this should not present the data gathered. Sa important points po ng recommendation, sa paggawa ng recommendation, this should express the probable extension of the study. It may also present the gaps, okay, of the study. Kaya po yung ating mga researchers, in reviewing the articles, para makita nyo yung gap, tingnan nyo yung recommendation. Because the recommendation may also express the gaps. And you may deal with those gaps, okay, in writing the previous paper. So this should also tackle the limitation that may be considered in the next research phase. So those limitations, those things that are not considered, and those things that are being foreseen by the study, those could be utilized as strong gaps or strong rationale of our study. So kaya nga po pag nag-review tayo ng paper, para makita natin kung talagang gap talaga yung ating pag-aaralan, tingnan natin ang mga recommendations sa mga paper. Okay? So example, ang recommendation natin, hindi naman po agad tayo ang recommendation. Siyempre, meron tayo agad munang introductory sentences. So under the umbrella of the analyzed quantitative and qualitative data, explored results and findings, produce implications and inferences, and the generate conclusions, the following recommendations are offered to extend the constructs of this research endeavor. So ito po yung mga sample ko na recommendation. And then our references will be in 7th edition. I will no longer discuss this at 7th edition. It is already embedded in research methodology class. At the same time, it will be also taught to you by your professors. Ako po, pag nagbibigay ako ng activity sa aking mga estudyante sa writing, meron akong instructional material na inia-attach sa kanilang assignment para meron silang pagkuhanan paano magawa ng reference in the APA 7th edition format. Okay? So, I hope that you refresh your ideas about writing the academic paper in the light of the trends of research, not only in the Philippines but in other country. And also, I hope that somehow yung mga estudyante natin, I hope that this discussion will not let you idle in writing your paper, but instead it will reinforce your motivation of coming up a quality paper. As what I am always mentioning to my students, what I am sharing with my students about writing a paper, sabi ko, you will spend a lot of time, you will spend money, your time, and a lot of resources in coming up with your paper, and make your paper a sensical one, something that will be utilized and something that will be benefited by other institutions or by other people, or by the target beneficiaries. Sabi kong ganun sa kanila. So yun lang naman po talaga yung kailangan natin in the first place. That our paper must be something that's quality. It will start with the quality conceptualization of the paper, and then until we withstand the quality by means of following the important modifications and some reminders in writing the different parts of the academic paper. With this, I am Dr. Dennis D. Masangkay, and I just want to thank our college for giving me the opportunity to share and to connect with you virtually, and trying to convince you and trying to open up our minds about the trends in writing academic paper. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Okay, here we go. That was
Medyo na po ako doon. Thank you po.
That was Dr. Dennis Masangkay. Another round of applause for everybody, for Sir Dennis. I don't think anybody could have discussed the topic more clearer than the way Sir Dennis did it. Okay, sir, before you leave us entirely today, this morning, thank you muna po for your very detailed and informative discussion. Ayan na. A very informative and comprehensive discussion on the new CT research content and structure. Sir, okay lang po ba? If we would like to invite you to answer some questions online?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay,
that's the essence, one of the essence of our session today, to entertain those clarifications.
Yes. Napaka considerate ng ating guest speaker for this morning. Now we proceed to the open forum, as our guest will try to answer some of the online queries. Please drop your questions. And also, we would like to request everybody to turn off the mic muna for the meantime, unless you are otherwise called to render your questions. So please drop your questions to the comment box. And please state your name, your affiliation, and your program, so that you will be called, or we will be reading, the technical staff will be reading your questions. And if your names cannot be read because of you presented it as a code name or symbols or something like that, please, we will not be able to address your questions. Okay. So we would like to request the technical team to provide us with the questions. I have here Sir, 1. Ano po? This is from Ma'am Leia Pakani. Halimbawa po, sir, ang output ng study ay skill-based activity plan, then nakagawa ng activity plan. Ito po ba ay need pang i-discuss kung paano ginawa, para saan ang plan na ito?
Okay, Sir Clean, thank you very much for that question about the output. Nagulat sila, akala talaga nila, it will just be giving the description of the output. But basically, it's for us to really showcase that our output is really research-based. So we need at least, a comprehensive discussion on how we come up and how we decide on the different parts of that of those activities. So example, ang part ng inyong activity, halimbawa nga, sabi ko nga, bakit kayo meron ganung parts sa inyong activity, di ba meron tayong mga sub-parts. Example, meron tayong, let's say, meron muna tayong clincher, example, or meron muna tayong, let's say, preliminary activity, and then we have the primary activity, and we have the post activity. So pwede kasing the researcher can design, can design, and normally the design must be something that's innovative, na wala siyang kagaya sa mga existing na activity sheets. That's what we are expecting among our students, that you will not be mimicking the principles and even the ideas of those activities that are present online, and even those that are printed. So we're expecting something innovative. And if it is innovative, if it is something new, then therefore you are the ones who can only explain its mechanism. Am I right? If you are the inventor of that activity sheet, then therefore we will not be able to understand, we will not be having the grasp of comprehending and even the utilization of that activity sheets if you, the inventor, will not be able to give something enlightenment about that invention. So that's the purpose why we have to include the abstraction and how we come up with our output. Sir Clean?
Yun. Okay po. Thank you, sir.
Para po yung circuit, halimbawa ako, naka-invento ako ng let's say, naka-invento ako ng ilaw na nakakapagpaputi. Example.
Oh, okay.
Halimbawa, ako sabi, maitim naman ako, moreno naman ako. Pag binuksan ko yung ilaw, pag binuksan ko yung ilaw, pagkatapos kong expose sa ilaw, maputi na ako. So, talo ko ang mga glutathione na mga tinutulok-tulok pa. It's painless. Am I right?
Yeah.
So, if I'm the inventor at dadalhin ko siya sa market, what would be expected from me? Since I am the inventor, then therefore, I must showcase a complete, a detailed explanation on the different parts and how this invention is working. The same, sasabihin natin, activity sheet naman po, sir, it's still an invention.
Yes,
okay?
Of course. And it is
sabi
crucial.
Natin, as much as possible, dapat nanggaling talaga kay researcher. Siya mismo yung nag-design ng activity sheet. Walang kagaya dapat yung activity sheets. Wala siyang, though pwedeng under the inspiration of something else, but I think hindi rin maganda na parang nanggaya tayo kasi nasa ng research doon kung nanggaya lang tayo. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you po.
And it is also crucial for other researchers who will be using your study to know the details. Ano po?
Yes.
So, okay, we have another question here. This is from Ma'am Severa Pagkaliwagan. Sir, I don't know if this is a question or just a clarification. Ano po? Sir, blessed morning. Naulit po nyo na ang SOP ay pwedeng 3 lang. Ang SOP po ay based sa extracted questions galing sa title. There is no question mark at the end. So, baka po ito'y clarification lang. Ano po?
Okay, Doc, with your question, sabi nga po natin, it's not the quantity. No? Para kasi lagi tayong nag-aano na kailangan 6, kailangan 5, standard natin 5. As what you notice in the objectives I presented to you a while ago, there are only 3, pero pagka ni-realize mong ang bawat objective, talagang unang objective pa lang, parang dumugo na kaagad yung ko doon, yung papaano ba yung manner ng papaano ko siya i-unravel, i-unfold natin lahat ng ideas about the first objective. So, once again, the panel members may utilize their expertise to weigh whether the 3 objectives can stand in one paper or not. So it will depend on the expertise of the panel members. The fact that they are invited as panel members, their idea and their knowledge about the topic being proposed by the researcher, and even with all the calibration of the research processes and techniques and a lot of stuffs about research. And I think you could weigh as panel member whether these three objectives are enough or not.
Ayun. Okay.
So depende pa rin po sa nature ng problem.
Depende sa problem. Yes, sir.
Actually, yun nga pong challenges and issues, it could be discussed within it can be embedded in the preliminary objectives. I mean, parang ano na din para sa akin yung objective about what are the challenges or determine the challenges and issues. It could be embedded in in discussing the data that are obtained in this objective number 1 or objective number 2. It can be embedded in that way. It can be discussed in that part. Parang sa akin, pwedeng embedded na lang yung challenges and yung issues, kasi pagka inano mo ang isang bagay, dapat inaalam mo yung what are the possibilities and what are the possible issues and challenges in meeting the demands of this principles or of this concepts, of these perspectives. So para siyang ganun. Para sa akin, para po sa akin, I don't know if you will agree with me, but pwede mo kasi ngang i-embed na nga yung challenges and issues sa mga prior objectives. Halimbawa, your objective number 1 is to know the pedagogical practices of science teachers in terms of curriculum and instruction. Siguro naman, in between or within the discussion ng curriculum at instruction, siguro naman mapapasadahan mo na din ano ba yung mga possible challenges na hinaharap ng mga science teacher in terms of implementing the curriculum and even in implementing doing the teaching and learning process. So I think that's an example na nakikita ko na it could be 3, it could be 4, it could be 2, depende sa bigat nga po ng problema.
Yeah. Depending on the gravity of the problem that you're presenting. Okay, thank you, sir. That's hell. Actually, these are very, very interesting questions, sir. Okay, from Ma'am Regine Dalute. She's thanking you for the insightful presentation, sir. She's very appreciative of your work. And she has 3 questions, actually. Do the researchers always need to have outputs, or the output is dependent on the established objectives?
In a master's thesis, since it's a utilization of theory, and theory will be only evident if there's an output.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But in the dissertation, the output is normally intangible. The output is normally intangible form. In intangible form, but in the form of writing. I mean, it's philosophical in nature kasi. It's intangible because in the form of ideas, but it's something that persuades or something that moves the belief of a specific person from traditional setting into a trending setting, by the way. So parang ganun. So pag master's thesis, I think there's a necessity. Sabi nga po ng mga estudyante ko, sir, paano pag qualitative? Ano po ang magiging output namin? Eh di magiging output mo will be the narration and will be the showcasing of the themes of the phenomenon that you are investigating. Example, halimbawa ang topic is all about qualitative, sabi na, wala naman po ang output dyan kasi normally ang output naman activity sheets, action plan, curriculum matrix, assessment matrix, kalimitan mga ganyan magiging output. Ngayon, paano pag po qualitative? Eh di, the same with what I did with the pedagogical model that I created. So nagkaroon ako ng isang paper para siyang guide, that's actually the model. Pero sa inyo sa master's thesis, pwede siyang guide. Let's say, guide for parents. Paano i-guide ang mga parents in dealing with the new normal education? Kasi ang kinandak mo is all about, let's say, phenomenology, about the experiences of parents in the modular distance learning. So, pwede mo maging output doon? ang magiging output mo will be, it could be an information, it could be a booklet or handbook guide that will enlighten the parents on how to handle their children at home in specific example in modular distance learning or online distance learning. There's always an output. It is because the output is the evidence. The output will be the essence of your study, because it will be the one that will be utilized in the aside from the conclusion that could be considered in policy making or in instructional decision making. Aside from that, mas maganda kung meron tayong output, and it's part of our culture, no?
Yeah.
Kasi pwede naman yung output walang culture eh. That is qualitative, pwedeng walang output. But since it depends on the culture of the university and it's part of our culture that every time we're going to write academic paper, there must be some tangible thing or some tangible outcome that will be utilized tangibly by our beneficiaries.
Yes, sir. Okay. We have here another question, sir. Specific for chapter 3, specific to qualitative research. Should we include triangulation? I noticed that earlier that this was not included as part of this chapter. Moreover, in this chapter, where do we put materials for criticism? Yun po.
Okay, so in qualitative research, in triangulation, it is very evident if we utilize different sources. There's no need to have that specific let's say triangulation, and then you're going to discuss how you triangulate the data. It is because knowing the fact that, for instance, my sources of data are classroom observation, documents from different schools, interview, and even questionnaire, then therefore it's obvious that there is a triangulation there. There's no need to brag that there is triangulation. And we're going to discuss the limit. It could be discussed in the limitation of your study, those imperfections in your study a while ago. We believe that there's no such perfect research design. Even example, if you will be conducting phenomenology, it has a specific weakness that it will just be that subjectivity probably between the isolation of the researcher from the phenomenon and the intrusion of the experiences brought by the participants. So those things could be discussed in the scope, the limitation of the study.
Okay. We have one more, sir. and they kept on coming. Sana po hindi kayo mapagod. Ano po? Okay, this is from Sir Vincent Joshua Cantos, MA student of Batangas State U, and also working at DepEd. DepEd Tingloy siya. Okay. Sir, congratulations. May I ask something about multi-referencing, how it will be integrated to our study? How many times this should be included in chapters 1 to 4? 1, 2, and 4 specifically. Because I have seen this in your sample study, how important referencing in writing our manuscript.
Okay, so it's interesting that you asked about multi-referencing. Multi-referencing makes our paper not so much voluminous. Meaning to say, instead of, because we are avoiding redundancy, am I right? So we will just be citing those references, but having the same idea, then therefore there will be redundancy in the ideas, and we avoid those redundancy or redundance rather. We avoid those redundance or those repetitions of ideas. That's why we have that multi-referencing, meaning, or what we call, meron pa tayong ibang tawag dyan aside from multi-referencing I cannot recall the terminology, but ibig sabihin lang doon that in one idea meron tayong, let's say, 2 to 3 citations. It is because after reviewing their claims, there are similarities, and they are similar in that specific aspect. Okay, so that's the importance of multi-referencing. But may bilang ba? Wala pong bilang. It depends on the case of the idea you are claiming. Kasi may mga ideas talaga na sobrang dami ang kumbaga, maraming mga tao magkakaparehas ng naging idea base sa kanilang sinulat. At may mga ideas naman na talagang hagya ka nang makakuha ng isa. Okay? So, it depends on the availability of the references that will support each idea in your paper.
Yeah, depends on how many there are available for the researchers.
Kasi may mga topics po talaga na bago. So, bago ka makahanap ng isa. And again, once again, what we are looking now is related. Hindi naman natin sinabi na exact. So, sinabi natin related. So, when we say related, probably in terms of the methodology, iba ang kanyang ginamit kaysa sa method na ginagamit mo ngayon. But I think the findings is very important to consider, no? In coming up with your hypothesis probably, or in coming up with your one of the literature reviews. Okay, so parang ganun.
Okay po. Another one. This is from Dr. Red Bersoto. He mentioned, sir, hi, Doc Dennis. Thanks for your excellent presentation. Teachers are good in storytelling as a gauge to effective learning. How do we encourage qualitative research among our grad students? Sabi po ni Dr. Red.
It will start with the research methodology, with the orientation of our faculty, by the way, because as we believe that hindi naman natin pwedeng sabihin na pag hindi ka maalam sa qualitative, hindi ka magaling. So I mean, most of our faculty members, ang kanilang orientation is more on the quantitative side. So I think if we will be having the capability building, probably, by the way, capability building focusing on qualitative. So it will start to be included in some of the discussions, But I am not questioning naman yung effort ng ating mga kapwa professors sa graduate school in terms of writing the different methods. Probably they are also sharing a lot of stuffs about qualitative. And at the same time, it will also depend on your interests. Okay, so the dean is also now open. Our college is also now open for qualitative researches.
Yeah.
Actually, sabi nga natin sa ating dean, with her open heart and open mind and with the embracing arms, open naman lagi siya pag may mga ganung mga suggestions. And the main reason din kung bakit siguro hindi masyadong nabibigyan ng din, kasi most of the thesis and dissertations in our library is in the form of quantitative. So, mamomroblema ako bilang researcher, pupunta ako sa isang lugar na na hindi naman available sa paligid ko. So, bakit ako pupunta doon? Kung marami na namang mga references na pwedeng kung pagtularan dun sa library. Now, we are starting to come up with those qualitative researches on academic papers para maging laman ng library na to inspire our students. But ngayon, pinapayagan po ang qualitative research. Kahit po math, I don't know kung Doc, yung mga math natin, mathematics pero qualitative. Meron pong ganyan.
Wow.
Even dissertation.
That's a little bit different, sir.
Nakita ko, that's a lot of difference. It's a new learning also. Kasi buong buhay mo, puro numero yung dinidil mo. Pero ngayon, you have to be vociferous with your expressions in terms of stating and restating and resynthesizing people's experiences.
Yeah.
So, parang gano'n. Kung dati parang very abstract yung ini-interpret mo, ngayon, very authentic, first-hand experience, very immersive.
Okay.
Awesome!
Thank you, sir. Talagang multitasking kayo. Parang kayong DJ.
Ito po. Another question po, pahabol po ni Sir Rep. Ano po?
Okay.
Why is modeling so relevant in today's teacher education research?
Okay.
Modeling.
So, a nice question, a critical question from our student.
Yeah.
Modeling is very important. It is because based on Republic Act 10533, or the Enhanced Basic Education Program, or the K-12 program na ating bansa, okay, everybody is allowed, or our curriculum must be supported by contextualization. And we can maximize contextualization by means of making localized pedagogical models. Probably the national government may be crafting that general pedagogical model, but basically with the context and with the locale that we have different sets of culture and beliefs. As we go from Luzon to Visayas to Mindanao, we will experience differences in terms of some cultural entities and practices and orientations. That's why I think modeling is an important or an emerging necessity as part of our dissertation or kung kaya sa master's thesis. But basically, sinasuggest natin ang modeling na magawa sa dissertation because it's philosophical, it's something new, something that will reformat or something that will reimagine the existing entities, conceptual entities of those practitioners. Kaya po siya mahalaga. Modeling is a way of contextualization. So, sa ngayon, ito yung nangyayari. Ito yung pwede natin gawin. After 3 years, alam niyo po yung mga models na ganyan, kalimitan 3 to 5 years lang po ang tinatagal niyan. Hindi yan forever na yan ang gagamitin. Okay? Kaya nga po research Kasi habang tumatagal, nag-emerge, may emerging, kaya meron tayong tinatawag na emerging pedagogical model that as we go along with the process, as we go along with the different changes technologically, economically, politically, nagkakaroon tayo ng pagbabago. So, yun, kaya po siya ay laging magandang maging output or maging target sa pagsusulat, yung paggawa ng model. It is because, sabi ko nga, ang expiration niyan hanggang pwede mo siyang gamitin, consider from 3 to 5 years na. Okay?
Okay. Wow. Napakadaming alam ni sir. Pati yung batas alam na rin. Kaulunan niya. Okay.
DepEd lang po. Mga related.
DepEd. Okay, we're still browsing. Our technical staff is still browsing if there are more questions. But I think puro pagbati na po at pag-congratulate sa inyo, sir. Thank you very much po. Okay, so technical staff, are there more? Wala na? Siguro po ay pagpapahingahin na muna natin si Sir Dennis. If
Thank
there
you very
are more,
much
yes, sir. If there are more questions to our audience, please, habol po natin yan. And of course, we will be relaying the message again to our speaker. Hindi pa natin papapahingahin pala si Sir Dennis pag may mga pahabol na tanong. Ano po? Sir Dennis, stand by. We will now be proceeding to the awarding of the certificate. Of course, hindi pwedeng walang certificate si Sir Dennis sa kanyang efforts na ginawa sa
okay lang po walang certificate.
Hindi po. Very much appreciated po ang inyong effort na ito. Will you allow me to read the citation? Wow. We have here a very beautiful background music from Batangas State University Pablo Borbon campus. A certificate of recognition is awarded to Dr. Dennis Masangkay for sharing his invaluable insights and expertise as a resource speaker in the webinar with the theme Sustaining Culture of Quality Research, a Shared Responsibility, held October 17, 2021, given 17th day, October 2021, signed by Dr. Abrea, our Dean, Dr. Charmaine Trevino, Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, and of course, Dr. Expedito Corda, Chancellor of Pablo Borbon Campus. Thank you very much, Sir Dennis.
Maraming salamat po. Huwag po kayong madadala. Maraming salamat po, Doc Dean, and to our department chairs. Thank you very much. Sir Clint, maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much.
Walang pagbabago sa boses. Ang tinig. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was Dr. Dennis Masangkay. Napakagaling. And we have learned a lot. For those who were asking for PowerPoint presentations, they will be available to you through your professors. So, kabatiin nyo dapat ang inyong prof. Pag yung pagsusubladuhan so that you will be able to be given the PowerPoint presentation of Sir Dennis. And that's it, folks, for our morning session. Ladies and gentlemen, we proceed to our lunch break. At the moment, everybody's advised to stay online. And we will begin afternoon sessions at... Ano nga ba? Sandali lang po. We will be referring to the... Ayun. According to the technical staff, we will resume our session at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Happy eating, everyone. Stay safe.